Part Siman Shin Vav in Shulchan Aruch that speaks about the concept of Mimtzu Hefzecha V'daber Davar. We're still with this pasuk in Yeshayahu that you have to consecrate Shabbat, make it distinct by not doing things that you do during the week. I'm not going to read the whole Siman. Some of the things are not relevant today. I'm going to highlight some things. Seif Aleph, Mimtzu Hefzecha, Hafatzecha Asurim, Afilu B'davar Sheno Oseh Shum Melacha. So the interpretation of the pasuk, Hefetz, in modern Hebrew, the word Hefetz is object. In biblical Hebrew, the Hefetz means desire or a goal. So Mimtzu Hefzecha means refrain from achieving your objectives on Shabbat. So any preparation, planning for something that cannot be done on Shabbat should be avoided. And the rabbis explain, Afilu b'davar sheno oseh shum melacha, even if you're not performing any work at the time. Kegon sheme'ayen nechasav lirot ma tzarich lemachar. You go, let's say you're renovating your house and you're living temporarily in a house in the same neighborhood, and you say, okay, let's go over, just check what progress was made on, so to be ready for next week, that you shouldn't do on Shabbat. So this, of course, is a recommendation. When they say asur, forbidden, it's based on the interpretation of the prophecy of Yeshayahu, and usually we don't learn halacha from Navi. So it's really more of a recommendation, and I think most of us feel naturally what is the appropriate thing to do here. Also, they talk about the concept of le'ashich al adhum, to walk to the limit of where you could walk on Shabbat. So when Shabbat is over, you could be closer to your destination. I think this is something that is not very relevant today, because we have means of transportation. You're not going to save much by walking another 3 hours of Shabbat to be at the border of the Tchum. So that's not something that you hear of commonly. But that is, Seif Daled is relevant. הסוחר את הפועל לשמור זרעים או דבר אחר, אינו נותן לו שכר שבת. לפיכך אין אחריות שבת עליו. If you hire someone for something which is inactive, he's a guardian, he has to guard your field or anything. So he doesn't do anything specific, it's just preventing damage. Still, you cannot pay him for Shabbat. Rather, you should pay him for a week or a month, and then automatically also has to do it on Shabbat. That's separate from the discussion that we have about Amira Legoy, about telling a non-Jew to do things for you. This is about that person just sitting and watching your stuff. He's not doing anything, still you cannot pay him. Saif Hey, something that applies to all Hazanim and to many rabbis. Asur lizkor Hazanim, להתפלל בשבת, ויש מי שמתיר. You can't hire someone to be a Hazan and work only on Shabbat, because then you're paying him for his work on Shabbat. Some people allow that. The same thing could apply to a rabbi. Usually a rabbi of a community works 24/7, right? From experience, I could tell that. You always have to be accessible. But if you're a visiting scholar or you come for a Shabbat, then you're basically, and you're paid for it, then you were hired for one Shabbat. How can you get payment for Shabbat? So some say it's forbidden, some say it's mutar. Those who say it's mutar rely on the fact that it's not a biblical prohibition, but rather an expansion of the words of Yeshayahu into something that is like a prohibition. However, some say that if you want really to make sure that there's no transgression committed, im secharo leshana or lechodesh lechol al mashare. If you hire that person for a week, for a year or a month, everybody agrees it's allowed. What happens with high holidays, Hazanim, they only come for 10 days, and the 10 days, but they only work on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and Shabbat. So what do you do with that? So the trick is that you don't pay them for their work on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Rather, you pay them for the minha of Erev Kippur and for Arvit of Motzei Kippur. For those two prayers, they get the bulk of the payment, and the rest is they do it voluntarily. So that's legal fiction. It just meant to help us digest it, to make it sort of permissible. But the truth is, like I said, it was never really forbidden. חפצי שמיים, מותר לדבר בהם, כגון חשבונות של מצווה, לפסוק צדקה, ולפקח על דברי עסקי רבים, ולשדך התינוק לארס, וללמדו ספר או אומנות. So, you're allowed to talk about heavenly issues, meaning issues of mitzvah, such as calculating mitzvah. For example, if you have to raise funds to to pay ransom, which was very common in medieval times, or to collect charity, or to lifsok tzedakah, to assess the worth of every person in the community in order to decide how much charity they will have to give. There was practice in medieval times. Today would be horrified by it, but in many Jewish communities, the gabaim of charity had the authority to enter your house and look at your stuff, because that's where you kept your money, right? No bank accounts. So they look at the silverware and the glassware, say, okay, how much money do you have? And then they will say, okay, you have to pay that much as taxes for the community. Talk about membership problems, right? So that is allowed. And also, leshadecha tinok la'ares, if you want to talk about shiduchim for your teenager, tinok doesn't mean a baby, it means a teenager. L'lamdo sefer, also, if you find a good teacher for your son, for your daughter, and you can talk to them on Shabbat, talk to them because it's important. And those two words, I have a feeling, are forgotten in most of the Haredi yeshivot, or umanut. If you find on Shabbat a teacher who could teach your son craftsmanship, a carpenter, a shoemaker, a blacksmith, that's umanut of the time, a tailor, and you say, hey, I have a son who's 12, 13, 16, I don't know, and I want you to teach him, will you do it? Can we talk about that? The Shulchan Aruch says it's a mitzvah, you should do it on Shabbat, contrary to the belief that working is a transgression. So Shulchan Aruch makes it very clear, such a mitzvah that you're allowed to talk about on Shabbat. Mutar limdod b'Shabbat medidah shel mitzvah. You're allowed to measure a measure for the purpose of mitzvah, such as measuring the mikveh. And it's interesting to note what is the second example that the Shulchan Aruch provides as a measuring for a mitzvah. It says limdod ezor mishu chole וללחוש עליו כמו שנוהגים אנשים מותר בהווה מדידה של מצווה. If you want to measure the belt or the girdle of someone who's ill, because once you know the exact measurement, you could say a specific spell on it that will heal that person. So this is witchcraft and wizardry, but that's okay because it's a mitzvah. So we see that alongside the logical assumptions and arguments in Shulchan Aruch, we also have this kind of superstitions that crept in and are even considered mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to do that, but in the Shulchan Aruch's defense, we could say maybe they believe that it helps in like a placebo. The moment that someone sees that you measure his belt and you say you utter several words over it, he believes that he's going to be healed. In Saif Het halacha that is impossible to follow, הרהור בעסקיו מותר, ומכל מקום משום עונג שבת, מצווה שלא יחשוב בהם כלל, ויהיה בעיניו כאילו כל מלאכתו עשויה. You're allowed to think of your business on Shabbat, just thinking, but not doing anything practical. However, because of the pleasure of Shabbat, Oneg Shabbat, it's recommended not to think about them at all and consider all of his work as if it is done. And that didn't always work for people. I think we've mentioned before, the Rema says that the reason that in the Ashkenazi communities, there's no duchening or nesiyat kapayim, birkat kohanim on Shabbat, is that people are concerned, they are very anxious and sad about the fact that they're not running their business on Shabbat. But only on Yom Tov, when they have a good meal and they're happy, it's okay. So the Rama admits that it was not very easy for people to keep up with that. I think we're blessed today. We have more of a leisure culture. I think that the test for a lot of people is to keep away from their phones and computers. If they use them on Shabbat, there is like this concept called half Shabbat, that people keep certain things, but except for using the cell phone or other electronic devices. And that, maybe not for us, but for digital natives, for younger people, is a big struggle because they can't let go of them. And I think that is where we should try to think more of this halakha. I wouldn't say implement it, because the issue, you don't want to impose anything on anyone, but really try people to feel how it is going a whole day without checking your email or messages or anything like that. And this is really this is a major undertaking. So as the Shulchan Aruch says, you can't prevent people from thinking about that, but it's better not to. Seif Yud Aleph, very interesting. מותר לקנות בית בארץ ישראל מן האינו יהודי בשבת וחותם ומעלה בערכאות. You're allowed to buy a house in Eretz Israel from a non-Jew because this is considered redemption. You're redeeming the land, even if it's on Shabbat. So the only day you could effectuate the sale is on Shabbat. So you do it, you sign, and you present it to the non-Jewish courts. Ma'ale be'arkaot. The Haggah adds, the Rama, be'arkaot shelahem, בכתב שלהם, דהיינו אסור רק מדי רבנן. ומשוב יישוב ארץ ישראל לא גזרו. So the Haggah says you could take it to a civil court and you write it in their language, because writing in another language other than Hebrew is forbidden only by rabbinical decree. And here, because we want to settle Eretz Israel, the decree does not hold. So that is a halakha that we will return to when we learn the concepts of writing on Shabbat. And that will be really, I think, startling to a lot of people, including people who study halakha regularly, to find out that there is a very strong case for saying that the only type of writing which is forbidden on Shabbat is the official Assyrian script, the one that we use for the Sefer Torah. And even if we apply it to other types of script in Hebrew, it's only Hebrew and not other languages. We could definitely not apply, you cannot apply, the concept of writing to digital writing. We're not saying that if it will be mutar or asur, that has to do with what we spoke before, but from the point of view of writing, this is not writing, which as a side issue also knocks out the argument of not being able to apply makeup on Shabbat because it's not writing. I think most Orthodox women and men, if you ask them, why can't you put mascara on Shabbat? They say, because you're writing. No, you're not writing. This is not a pencil. You're not writing any letters. Then they will say coloring. You're not coloring either, because you cannot dye human skin with a pencil, or any color of there is there, in regular cosmetics. But that's another issue. The important thing here is that this is a statement that appears in the Talmud. You could buy a house from a non-Jew on Shabbat and you sign it and you present it to the Arkot. The original statement did not make any reservations how you sign what you write. Later on, they came with this reservation, Baktav Shelahem. It could be in another language, not in Hebrew. Then someone came up with it's not clear, we could find out the source, but here it's presented by the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says about Chotem u'ma'aleh ba'arkaot, and the Ateretz also brings it. Chotem u'ma'aleh ba'arkaot, meaning you sign it and you present it to the civil court. He says, not, God forbid, that the Jew will do it, but rather, Perush de mar'elo kis shel dinar, the Jew can show him the bag with the coins, והגוי חותם ומעלה לערכאות בכתב שלהם. And the goy writes it, and the non-Jew writes it in in a non-Hebrew script that is only forbidden by Rabbanan. So you're not writing and you're not writing in Hebrew, so it's okay. But really, that's not what the halacha says. The original halacha is very clear. You write it and you sign it on Shabbat. Seif Yudaled, מי ששלחו לו שהוציאו ביתו מביתו בשבת להוציאה מכלל ישראל, מצווה לשום לדרך פעמיו להשתדל בהצלתה. If someone was told, and that is based on a true case, that one of the responses that the Shulchan Aruch dealt with, if someone was told that his daughter was kidnapped on Shabbat in order to be converted to another religion, he must travel on Shabbat and try to save her. He should travel as far as to cross the Tchum Deoraita, and if he doesn't want, we force him. So one would say, wow, beautiful. We do care about the girl, right? Shayna, you're not happy with that? I know why, I think. Because the concern, yeah?
Well, the thing is, why is it necessary to say that? Because that's the epitome of saving a life.
Right, that should be obvious. However, it's not so clear. It was not so clear to them, and I think that also the intriguing thing is that they say specifically they took her from your house to convert her to another religion. Meaning, if they would have said they took her from your house to do whatever they're going to do to her, but she's going to remain Jewish, that's okay. You don't have to go. But that's a certain mentality. And you see in one of the commentators, so before, where was that? So the Ba'er tells him, why is it mitzvah? Because God forbid, if he doesn't do it, she will be a convert forever, converted to another religion. But Mishnah Berurah here says, V'chol Zemairi, you see the end of the first line, V'chol Zemairi she'yotzi'uha enam Yehudim mibeito be'ones. That is only if the non-Jews took her out of his house by force. Aval im pash'a, but if she joined them deliberately, eno le'avia le'chalel Shabbat ba'avura. The father should not desecrate Shabbat for her, which really is scary. It's a bit, it's very scary. It's an extremist opinion, because you might be talking about a teenager, about a woman who doesn't really know what's going on. Maybe she was tempted, maybe she was enticed, to say to the father, oh, she went willingly, so let her suffer the consequences. She's the criminal. So definitely this is not the way we should act. And I think that intuitively, this is not how people acted. When they knew that someone is in danger, they went and they did what they had to do. Okay, so this is Siman Shinvav. We're done with that. Let me pause for a second and see if we have any questions on this. Okay, so to go back to the Shulchan Aruch.
Wait, Rabbi, I have a question. Would the age matter? Like if it's like a a young girl, like 16?
They don't say anything. It's like just Bito. Apparently, as long as she's under his custody, it's his responsibility. But the Mishnah Berurah says it's just a this is what we call the casuistic phrasing of halakha. It's not the absolute format that says the legalistic form, which say you're allowed to transgress Shabbat in order to save a person. But rather, if someone's daughter was kidnapped, you could go. What about if you heard that someone's daughter was kidnapped? Could you go? Of course you could go. Anyone goes. The halakha is that if 100 people heard that, and even if they know that each one of them knows that 99 other people heard it, each one of them must go, because you don't know who's going to save her. And if you don't do it, we will fall into the trap of everybody thinks someone else is going to do it. So there's no limit here. In Siman Shin Zayin, he speaks about mitzvot that depend on dibur, because the next part of the pasuk is v'daber davar, you should not speak words that are not appropriate for Shabbat. So you should not, ilkach, דיבורך של שבת לא יהיה כדיבורך של תורה. The way you speak on Shabbat should not be the same as you speak on a regular day. But also, even if you want to keep that mitzvah, it doesn't mean that you're allowed to offend other people. Of course, I've seen it more than once, especially with Baalei Teshuvah, that other people are about to tell them something, and they stop, they cut them short, and they say, no, this is not Shabbat, I don't want to hear about that. This is not polite, this is not something that the halacha says. The other person is about to talk to you. Find a way to divert the conversation to the topic that you think is appropriate, but not in an offensive manner. And it says, "Va'afilu." So what you shouldn't do is, I'm going to do this or I'm going to buy that. "Va'afilu b'sichad devarim betelim asur la'avot." And you can't even talk too much idle talk. And that again is something that happens. I have my brother-in-law actually in Israel decided that on Shabbat he's not going to talk about anything that is not related to Shabbat. So the best way for him to do it is to declare a ta'anit dibur, a talking fast on Shabbat. So on Shabbat, he doesn't say anything except of his learning in the brachot. And his wife is actually very happy because there's an opportunity for her to tell him whatever she wants, and he cannot respond. So it's a fun game for them. But joking aside, this is a dangerous thing, because for that person who thinks that he's doing mitzvah by not saying anything, what he thinks is idle talk, he cuts himself off from his family. They cannot talk to him, his children, there's no communication. That is in itself a mitzvah. The Haggah adds, ובני אדם שסיפור שמועות ודברי חידושים הוא עונג להם. People who enjoy hearing the news, and that's their pleasure. You could talk to that. You could talk about it on Shabbat the way you do on a regular day. But if you do not derive benefit from it, if you don't enjoy it, don't say it just to make your friend happy, which is a bit, that's my tradition. He's known for his kind of scheme. But really, when I read that, I'm thinking about a famous story that I think is important, for people to know. And a very well-known halakha is that that if sitting in the sukkah is uncomfortable for you, you're too cold or you're sick or something, you're exempt. You don't have to sit in the sukkah. So it actually is a story about the Hafetz Haim, the author of Mishnah Berurah, who had a guest who came over on Sukkot, and the Hafetz Haim told him, he said, "I'm very sorry, I'm not feeling well. So if you don't mind, you eat in the sukkah. I'm going to stay in the house, and after you're done eating, come join me in the house." So the guest went to the sukkah, but after a couple of minutes, the Hafetz Haim joined him, and the guest was surprised as what happened. And the Hafetz Haim answered, he said, "Not feeling well exempt me from sitting in the sukkah, but it does not exempt me from hospitality. Still have to be nice to you." So I think similarly, if you see that saying something or doing something, like say, talking about the news on Shabbat makes your friend happy, do it. Even though I would agree that one topic that you should avoid around the Shabbat table is politics. It never ends well. But the that idea of limiting your Shabbat talk in a strict manner is never healthy. And I've seen that around different Shabbat tables. For me, the Shabbat table of my grandfather, where everything was open for conversations, science, technology, philosophy, poetry, except for politics, I think that is a good recipe to open a dialogue and have people talk around the table. Okay.
Rabbi Ovadia?
Yes.
Since the audio is rather hard to understand, I'm wondering if you're recording this so that maybe I can go back later.
1 second. Okay, so well, after this sort of technical problem, we're going to continue in Siman Shin Zayin. So Siman Shin Zayin speaks about speaking. What are the words that you're allowed to say or not say on Shabbat? Dinei Shabbat Adim B'Dibur. So we spoke about talking about the general concepts that are not related directly to Shabbat. Another important halacha here is in Seif Yud Gimel, Shitrei Hediotot, דהיינו שיטרי חובות וחשבונות ואיגרות של שאלת שלום, אסור לקרותם. So that's what they called, lay material, right? Something that is not related to Torah or mitzvah, which is שיטרי חובות וחשבונות, the bit, etc. ואיגרות של שאלת שלום, even letters that people send you, cannot read it on Shabbat. Why can't you read letters on Shabbat? The Mishnah Bura says, because you're going to confuse them with bills. I don't think today it doesn't really apply, let alone who really sends a letter. And unfortunately, this is a lost art. Nobody does letters. People send cards, and usually they're pre-made. Last year, I think I got 3 handwritten letters, and each one of them was on my desk for a month, waiting for an opportunity to write back. But anyway, a lot of people would not open letters on Shabbat, which I think is probably correct, because most of the letters that you get are bills, and you don't want to open it on Shabbat. But if there's a letter that really interests you and you want to open it, the halacha is that you can open it. It's allowed to open it. It's not considered Korea or Mehatech or anything like that, like some people say, because it's mekalkel. Kol mekalkelim pturim. You don't have to worry about that, because it's the paper is destroyed. You're not going to use it again. And if there are some people who are very environmentally minded and will keep open envelopes to put stuff in them, they fall under the category of batla da'atam mitzel kol adam. They're a negligible group within the majority, so we don't consider their behavior to be the norm. So usually you could do that. Kotel או וילון שיש בו צורות חיות משונות או דיוקנאות של בני אדם של מעשים, כגון מלחמות דוד וגוליית וכותבים זאת צורת פלוני וזה דיוקן פלוני, אסור לקרות בו בשבת. This is a typical description of medieval art in palaces and of course churches, but what Jews wouldn't go to, but even some synagogues you would have that. And that is it says a wall or a curtain that has woven on it weird animals, or maybe monsters, or people with stories, as the wars of David and Goliath, and they write this is this and this is that. You cannot read it on Shabbat. There's a famous fabric, like I think from Bordeaux, where you see one of the Crusaders, or maybe Roland, one epic song from the time of the wars of the Franks against the Britons. So this is what they refer to. You cannot read it on Shabbat because it's going to distract you. Maybe you're going to write. And in Seif Zayin, it says, מליצות ומשלים של שיחת חולין ודברי חשק, כגון ספר עמנואל, וכן ספרי מלחמות, אסור לקרוא בהם בשבת. Parables and allegories, romances and stuff that people had this kind of literature in medieval times. He quotes Sefer Emanuel. It's a book called Emanuele Romi. It was an Italian poet that wrote poetry that was a bit saucy, a bit bold. And he says you don't read it on Shabbat, and he adds you can't even read it on a weekday because of Moshav Letzim, because of its mockery and it borders on idolatry, and you're enticing the one's desire. And if you wrote it or copied it or printed it, you cause the public to sin. So this is a very traditional sort of extremist point of view. The Haggah actually here is a little more lenient. It says, "V'nira ledakdek, דהזה אסור לקרוא בשיחת חולין וסיפורי מלחמות, היינו דווקא הם כתובים בלשון לעז, בלשון הקודש הרי. The Aga says the idea that you cannot write that you cannot read those books on Shabbat only or on a weekly day, on weekdays. It's only if they are written in another language. But if they're written in Hebrew, it's okay. It's also not very much in line with the way the Haredi community thinks today, where Hebrew is not it's the Shona Kodesh. It's only for holy texts and not other things.
I have a question, Rabbi, on this.
Yes.
So let's say I have, I'm just going to throw, everybody knows 50 Shades of Grey, right? I never read it, but it's very popular. So according to this halakha, I'm not allowed to read it in English, but if I were to pick up the translation that they sell in Israel in Hebrew, it would be mutar?
That's a tough question. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I didn't read the book. I don't know if I would sanction, it depends on how it affects people, Personally, with my children, and I say out to other people, would never censor any type of literature. I think that if you read something and you feel that it's right for you, you read it. And if you think that it's not right for you, you drop it. I think that for me, literature that would be forbidden or should not be read is literature that brings people to treat each other with disrespect. That would be a problem. I mean, so I don't know if the book is with the full on literature they call exploiting, but if not, no, it's to each his own.
It's very like romancy and sexual stuff. I'm just using it as a general analogy for the language.
Extreme example, but I'm saying in every genre or in everything that you do, eventually the person who holds the yardstick is you. Some people could read the Tanakh and find the rabbis were considering Shir HaShirim should be buried because they didn't know how we would interpret it. And in sometimes I attend a Talmud learning group on Shabbat that Rabbi is also part of it, so he knows what I'm talking about. That sometimes we're learning a Talmudic text, and those who want to take it to strange places could do it even with the Talmudic text, right? So eventually it's up to us. So that's what I'm saying. This halachot that I'm just teaching now in the Shulchan Aruch, should be taken with the salt, with the grain of salt. And people have to use discretion on what to do and what not to do. To me, when those things get out of hand is when you see that this is what happens. And depends on the household. When you see households that forbid any type of literature except this which is sanctioned by the Orthodox authorities, and where the parents would not allow the children to play board games on Shabbat or stuff like that. And they will say, you play, I'm not going to play with you. But what causes this feeling of alienation between the parents and the children. 1 second. I'm going to pause the recording for 1 second.
Rabbi, we can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
Okay, so repeat that because it's in the recording. And sometimes I have to spend Shabbat with the Haredi family, and I know that I'm not going to have any reading material, other than my learning material, or sometimes the books that they're in the library I would learn as well. But if I want something else to read, I have a problem. I bring my own reading material. But there was one family, not my family, friends of mine, that I stayed over when I lived in LA and came visiting several times, and I was always struck by the fact that they didn't have one good teenager, teen reading or youth reading material. None of the great names of the great works, or of the popular works that's out there. Definitely not even the Harry Potter or anything like that. So they were all the Orthodox sanctioned, authorized books, and I tried to read some of them. It was horrible. It was really so. How I say, it was written for a purpose. It's an agenda. It's shallow. Why is it important? Okay, so they don't have good reading material. The two older daughters in that family went completely off the derech, in a way that the parents are devastated. They don't understand what happened to their daughters. And when I say completely off the derech, I mean that they dress in a way that for their parents is provocative, is preposterous. But they're not only doing it because they feel comfortable like that, but they definitely do it to upset their parents. They went to the engagement of one of the children, and all of the guests were Haredi, and those girls came in there. They know they're not even trying to do something. I'm not saying that they have to do it. I'm saying the way. This is what happens. See, when you take these halachot and you stick with them to an extreme, and you say you could only read this, you could only do this. There could be a beautiful world of literature and poetry out there, but we're not going to let you see it. That's what you're going to have. You're going to have later on destruction. So this is I'm reading those halachot as a cautionary tale. That and that's definitely not what I preach. Yeah. Yes, I agree with Daniel's statement that the derech is too narrow. I was just talking to someone about that. But what is it that we're trying to do? And I think in a way, what we're trying to do, in Torah Ve'Ahava and Simcha B'Ragos is a renaissance of Judaism. It's to bring back our ancient values into life and realize that what we think is today maybe modern Orthodoxy or Old Orthodoxy is really almost like the Dark Age in a sense, and it's not healthy. And that brought to my mind an example of the kind of debates, religious debates that raged in medieval times before the Renaissance. One of the favorite theological debates was how many angels could fit on a pin's head, right? And I feel in many aspects, this is what the Haredi community is trying to do today. And they try to fit so many angels on that tiny pinhead. Eventually, they fall off. They fall off the derech, and you lose them. So they have to open up a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to halacha. Okay, just to show you the immediately following this in Seif Yud Zayin, where it says asur lilmod b'Shabbat v'yom tov zulat b'divrei Torah. You could only learn divrei Torah on Shabbat. You can't learn general sciences. But some people allow that. An astrolabe was an old measuring utensil for that usually sailors use. It says some say that it's forbidden, some say it's mutar. So regarding science, they have a debate. But in Seif Yud Het, they say Ishol min hashed, mashu mutar b'chol mutar b'Shabbat. If you want to ask a demon, if you have a question that you need to communicate to a demon, you're allowed to do it on Shabbat in the same manner that you're allowed to do it on a regular day. So when you see that you have realized that all these things that are written about literature and sciences and in Shulchan Aruch, we have to take with limited authority. I think we understand better today that the more we learn, the more we know, the more our intellect is engaged and peaked. It's better for the overall approach and overall education of our children, of our families. Okay, so that is Seif Shin Zayin. Let's pause for a second, see if we have more questions on that issue. Okay, so now we're going to go to Siman Shin Het. It's an essential Siman because it speaks about Muktzeh. So what is the concept of Muktzeh? Literally, Muktzeh means set aside. There was actually a part in the not on in the house, outside the house, that was called Muktzeh. It was the pen or the storage area where you would store usually firewood and stuff like that. And it was called Muktzeh because it was in the katzeh, it was in the corner of the house. That's the idea of katzeh. But the rabbis borrowed this term of Muktzeh to say that there are certain objects on Shabbat you sort of push aside and you put in the corner and you fence them off and you don't want to touch them on Shabbat. So those things you should not touch on Shabbat. And this is something that was taken way out of context, out of proportion, and almost everything falls into Muktzeh today in the Orthodox mentality. But look what the Shulchan Aruch said based on the Mishnah: כל הכלים ניטלים בשבת, חוץ ממוקצה מחמת חסרון כיס. You could move around any utensil on Shabbat, except something that you don't want to touch because it's extremely expensive, such as a knife of the knife of the shochet, or the knife that is for the milah, the razor of the barber, and the knife that scribes use to make the quills. כיוון שמקפידים שלא לעשות בהם תשמיש אחר, אסור לטלטלו בשבת, אפילו לצורך מקומו או לצורך גופו. Because you make sure that you don't want to do anything else with them, you don't move them on Shabbat. So, other than that, Torah also says you can carry anything. And in Seif Bet it says, כל כלי, אפילו גדול וכבד הרבה, לא נתבטל שם כלי ממנו, לא יפני גודלו ולא יפני כובדו. Any utensil, any object in your house, even if it's extremely heavy and big, it's still a utensil. You can still an object you could carry it around. Could be the sofa, could be the, a mallet that, you use playing, not the golf, what is it called, the cricket, whatever. All these things you could carry around Shabbat. And another thing, in Seif Gimel, כלי שמלאכתו לאיסור, מותר לטלטלו. An instrument that is usually used for something forbidden, you're allowed to move it on Shabbat, בין לצורך גופו, whether to use the object itself, בין לצורך מקומו, or if you need the place where it is, so you're allowed to move it. So what is לצורך גופו? You need the object itself. כגון כורנס של זהבים או נפחים לפתור באגוזים, you have a hammer, even if the hammer is usually used by a goldsmith or a blacksmith. When you needed to crack some nuts, you could do it on Shabbat. Or an axe, in order to cut a block of dried figs. It was very hard. You had to really use a lot of force to cut it. That you do. Or this thing occupies the space that you need. You can move it in order to use that space. But you cannot move it from an unsafe to a safe place just to save this object. But if that instrument is usually used for something which is permitted, you could move it around even if you want to protect it from being broken or moved. So those are the core halachot as mentioned in the Mishnah. They're very simple. Now, the reason why that became complicated is that we've changed and we've evolved from a society where you have very few utensils at home. Like when they think of something that you use usually for something forbidden are tools of construction, and they say you find a use for them. Tools are very expensive. There'd be a couple of knives that are so sharp and you don't want them to have a fault. But when you walk into a modern household, you have thousands of items. And how can you determine each one of them, whether it's Muktzeh, it's not Muktzeh, can I use it or not, what other use it has? So that is how this safe really got out of proportion. I'm going to go to things that are really relevant for us. And this, for example, Seif Yud Het, קוץ המונח ברשות הרבים מותר לטלטלו פחות מ400 What if you walk in the street and you see that there is he says a thorn, but what if a broken glass? You should move it. You should move it to the side so people will not be damaged by it. If it's kamerit, you could pick it up and move it aside. Based on what I said in Rabbi Yosef Mesas, you should really make sure that the road is clear everywhere. I personally am very careful about that when I see broken glasses or broken branches that people could trip on. I move it aside because when I was a kid, when I was I think in second grade, the neighbor next to our school used to once in a while she would throw her used bottles into our playground, and I don't know why she did that, but I fell and one shard of glass got into my knee. I spent most of the summer vacation in bed, and since then, since second grade, I'm very, very cautious whenever I see broken glass and also something could trip on it. And there's something really that we see is mentioned in halakha, even on Shabbat, you should move it so people would not fall. All the examples that he brings here up until Seif Kavav are really things that we don't usually have. They're not household items. They are construction materials. So yes, if you have at home maybe a couple of boards, floorboards, just fixing the floor, don't move them on Shabbat. So there's the procedure that we should take care to do is before Shabbat, scan the house and see what are the things that I don't think I'm going to move on Shabbat and put them aside. A lot of the things that we have today cannot easily fall into the categories of Muktzeh or not, even though people just throw that label on anything. Like is cell phone Muktzeh on Shabbat? You can say, yeah, because Melachol Yisur, you use it to call, but is the Yisur rabbinical or biblical? What do you do if you left your cell phone on the table between the halot and the wine and everything? Last night before Shabbat, what are you going to do? You're going to shake the tablecloth until it falls? It's better to take it and put it aside because it will cause you more of ogumat nefesh. If that stays there, it will cause you sorrow and damage even. So, and this is all rabbinical, it's better to move. Here I would say that the halakha that we've learned several simanim ago, I think in it was maybe Resh Nurhed, that en adam ma'amid atzmo al mamono. If you travel and you got to the city before Shabbat and you realize you could make it to the city before Shabbat, and you realize that you're carrying money, you can keep on going with the money into the city. And they say, why did we allow you to carry your wallet into the city? We know that you would not stand idly by and see your money being stolen or lost. So instead of you doing it in a way which is forbidden, we allow you to do it. So I think when it gets to issues like that, you have precious electronics that were left, a laptop that was left, let's say, on the table. You don't do what you would have done maybe with money, which is, push it to the floor and, sweep it under with your foot under something, but rather take it and put it in somewhere safe because otherwise, either you're going to suffer or whoever left it there is going to suffer. So we'll see. This is a long saif, and actually the second half, there are many details several details that I would like to dwell on. One of them is saif 27, Chazayin. What about leftovers on the table? A lot of people, they think they're strict about this, but they misunderstand the reality of today versus that of the Shulchan Aruch. And then at the end, the Shulchan Aruch brings a couple of new items for him that we have to talk about also. So I think we'll stop here today. Hopefully, we will have a show next week. Depends, and then I will send you a message. I hope we'll meet next week. If not,
I'm the only Cuban here.
Sorry. Anyway, I hope we'll meet next week. If not, I wish everybody Shana Tova, V'tukah, Hatima Tova, and we'll see you soon. להתראות. ביי.